Hello everybody. Last time we had made a video covering broadly the provisions of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act and what are the certain shortcomings which we consider. Today our video is going to be very important because we are going to discuss about the implementation of the Dpdp Act and what are the organizational structures which a company needs to take and the technical measures which are required to be taken, which this act expects from a company which is handling the personal data in digital format. So welcome Abhishek, and first of all I congratulate you on your new venture that you've joined as fantastic. Congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, sir, for having me for the third time.
And Abhishek, today we are going to discuss about how the companies they should implement this DPDP Act. So the first question which strikes our mind is that what all type of organizations are covered by the DPDP Act?
Certainly, sir. So, before moving forward, I will tell you to whom it will apply. First of all, it will not apply to everyone. It will apply to only those organizations who is processing PIIs, personal identifiable information, in a digital format.
Okay.
So, an organization which is not doing processing any kind of PIIs in a digital format will that organization doesn't have to worry about
The DPDP
by
Act.
DPDP Act. They don't have to
Okay.
comply with this if they are not doing any kind of these things. And the processing is, so one will ask, what is processing of data? Starts with collecting of data, indexing of data, and how you are keeping it data. So
Okay.
that is processing. So an organization has to, who is processing doing these kinds of work, has to comply with DPDP Act.
Right. So when we are talking about the processing of the data is already defined in the act, which includes collecting the data and indexing, mapping, and all those things. So in what manner the act requires the data fiduciary, the company which is collecting data, in what manner they can collect this data?
So a company can collect the data on basically on 2 points.
Right.
First is on the basis of a consent. So the data principal is giving their own consent in order to process their data. It can be related to for example, a company who is listed on the website like an Amazon. I can give their consent in order to buy some good. So that's a
Right.
consent from my side. And another will be legitimate use. Legitimate use can be anything for a company. For example, it can be, for example, in order to provide you health benefits, or in order to comply with the rules and regulation of a country.
Right.
So that will come under legitimate use.
So basically, there are certain legitimate uses which
Yes.
are given in section 7 of
Yes.
the DPDP Act,
Exactly.
which says that it will be apart from the consent mechanism of
Exactly,
collecting the
exactly.
data. And in the consent mechanism, like you told, that where the personal data is being processed in digital format, so I think it will also cover various schools also. It will cover schools also who are collecting data of the students, processing their data, and also of their parents. Am I right on this?
You are right to the point. So we should, whenever we think of data, we can start from a grassroots level.
Right.
Grassroots level will be the schools, the hospitals, even the banks,
Right.
even the ATMs which are already there. So everything, who is collecting data, who is collecting data, for example, the name of the student, name of the parents, their Aadhaar cards, their
Right.
PAN cards, sometimes example the checks, and in order to pay the the fees and everything,
Right.
everything will be collected by the school. So I'll say that in a big school can be a significant data fiduciary as well, because the
Right.
volume of the data they are collecting is so huge.
Right. So we'll come to that also later. What is a significant data fiduciary? Significant data fiduciary is somebody which is an organization which is specifically defined in DPDP Act. So we'll ask you about that also later. So now the main crux of our discussion today, for which we have started, is that what are the organizational setup, what are the positions which are expected by this act, the DPDP Act, and the technical measures which are at least required to be taken and the compliances. So can you tell us what are the organizational in an organization setup, what are the positions which this act requires for the companies to take?
So starting with the positions which an organization has to make, or in order to give, they can give, even give the, for example, training to the particular person who is already there, or they can hire new persons, new people who are very well aware of the laws related to data privacy.
Right.
So first it will so as per the Dpdp Act, a DPO is required,
Right.
a consent manager is required,
Mm.
authorized person is required who will work on the behalf of a data fiduciary. These all three are the main things which organization has to make sure they are in the place of in an organization.
Right. Now, I think, Abhishek, we can just refer briefly to these various provisions of this act so that we can make it clear to the listener also about the positions which Abhishek has told. Like you told about the authorized person. Like there is a provision given in the act that person who is authorized by the data fiduciary to respond to, there has to be a person, and I could make out that it expects in section 6 when a data is given by the consent, there that is the company which is collecting the data to authorize any person to respond to the communications from the data principal for the purpose of exercising her rights under the provisions of this act. So Abhishek, can I say that there has to be a person in place who is authorized by the company to respond to these requirements, the queries of the data principal?
Exactly. So a authorized person by data fiduciary can be anyone. It can be a person who is already working in an organization. For example, I am working in an organization as a lawyer right now, but now I am aware of the fact that this act is coming into the place, so I can learn about it, and my data fiduciary will make me an authorized person to handle all the related scenarios related to the request for DPDP and everything,
Right.
which is taking place in DPDP Act. And another can be like an organization can hire someone from outside who is aware of data privacy laws and who can help the organization to move forward in implementation, maintenance, or how to go ahead with the DPDP Act.
And Abhishek, what I could also see additionally in section 10 is it is talking about the additional obligations of the significant data fiduciary, and so a significant data fiduciary should have a the data protection officer also.
See, a DPO can be appointed by any data fiduciary,
Right.
but DPDP Act says that a data fiduciary who is significant. So significant, what makes a data fiduciary significant is nature of data they are collecting
Right.
and the volume of data they are collecting.
Okay.
So I'll give you. So DPDP Act says that in any scenario, a significant data fiduciary has to. There is no discretion. It has to appoint a DPO.
Okay.
But an organization who is not a significant data fiduciary
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to appoint a DPO.
And Abhishek, then next I could also see there is also a position of the consent manager, which is required by the act. And
Yes.
if we see the section 2 definition G, it says consent manager means a person registered with the board who acts as a single point of contact to enable the data principal to give manage review. So can you tell something about that?
So first of all, consent manager thing is very new.
Okay.
Example, I'll give you an example of GDPR so it is clear to you as well, because in GDPR there is nothing like consent manager. So a person who might be like working for an organization and who is aware of the fact that how a GDPR works and what all needs to be there, so he can be taking consent, or a person who is handling consents can be the person who can be the consent manager. But over here it is crucial, and it, as the act says, an organization who is collecting PII has to appoint a consent manager which is going to be registered via board.
Right.
So first of all, he needs to be a consent manager registered via board. This is the first thing, and he should be, as per my understanding, he should be tackling those cases, scenarios, like for instance, in which data is being processed on the basis of consent.
Right.
So as I already told you in the beginning of this video, that the data is collected on the basis of two things: legitimate interest and on the basis of consent.
Okay.
So any data which is collected on the basis of consent has to be taken care by data manager.
Okay, okay. So this is a very important position, I think. And then there is something given about the data processor also. In this, the position of a data processor.
So basically, data processor will be anyone who is processing data.
Right.
on the behalf of data fiduciary.
Okay. So company which has collected this data, and when it processes the data, it can get the data processed by a data processor. So data processor is basically acting on behalf of the company for processing of these data.
Exactly. So I'll say, just to add one more thing, a company who is already compliant with laws like GDPR, it will be really easy for a company to get compliant with Dpdp.
Okay, so that is a very good point. So if they are already complying with GDPR, so they already have some sort of organization set up which can help to comply with the DPDP also.
Exactly.
So these are some of the organizational setup positions which are expected by the DPDP Act to be put in place by the data principal, that is the companies who are processing the personal data of these data fiduciary. Now